So we've done many videos talking about narcissists, narcissism, what to look out for, abuse in marriages, and things of that nature. And we've been asked to talk, to speak to an issue that is present in churches around women that demonstrate narcissistic traits and how harmful this is to other women, especially young women. I want to welcome you to this video today. My name is Joanna Daniel, a trauma-informed counselor. I live in the UK. We run Wounds to Scars. Michelle is a member of our team. And we're going to talk today about women in, not necessarily, they're not necessarily in leadership, are they, Michelle? But they just have narcissistic traits and how harmful that is to the vulnerable, oftentimes the younger women in church. Tell us some ways that, because you and I were having this conversation, we were talking about some of the ways that it demonstrates it's showed up and how harmful it is and how many people are wounded as a result of it. So let's get into it.
So the woman in church who shows the narcissistic trait may look like this. She will have a very strong personality. She may show passive aggressive behavior. For example, she may always allude to the time that you come in, or you may not be wearing the appropriate clothing.
Let's talk about time that you come in. Like she might talk about you're late for church.
Yes. So you know, they're usually people that may sometimes hold positions in church because it's all about grandiosity, it's all about image control. And when that individual has a position in the church, she's going to want to make sure that everything is done to her standard, not necessarily to God's standard, but she will have her own standard, and you better meet it. So, for example, if you're a family of three or four, if you're a single mother of 3 or 4 children, and sometimes life happens and you're not always there on time. This female individual will be the one that says, your family can never be here on time. What are you doing? Why don't you wake up earlier? And she'll be saying this in a public arena. She'll be saying it in front of all the other children, or she may say it from the pulpit. Yeah, she wants to shame you. She wants to humiliate and embarrass the family. The individual will, and sometimes they use, when you talk to them about maybe it's something that you're going through, they don't actually hear what you're saying. They only hear what they're saying to you. So, for example, they may say, I had a really bad day at work, or I'm really struggling in college. The answer will be, well, when I went to college, I was absolutely fine. I was an A student.
Yeah. I never struggled. I was always on time. I was a single mom, and my children were never late for Sabbath school or Sunday school or whatever.
That's right. So they'll never hear your concerns. They'll only respond by what you're not doing according to their rules and their instructions and their lifestyle.
And it's just as harmful and detrimental. And I think when we're thinking about safeguarding, leadership really need to pay attention to this as much as any other thing, anything else. It just occurred to me, I feel like we're asking leadership to do a lot, but that's why you're a leader. That's why you're a leader.
The position, to lead. So
I know it's not so that you can
lead.
It's to lead. It's not so that you can have a power to run special days. These are some of the things to look out for within the community. So that we're looking after people. So especially community with well, let me not say especially. Let me not make a broad statement. But do you find that it's the people that you get to talk to? Is it localized to communities is it cultural? I'm going to ask, or is it just across the board?
That's a good question. I think it's both, because some leaders have cultural norms and values that they think is acceptable for everybody, but it's not. It's not acceptable. So, for example, in just speaking about the time thing. So, that may be expected in some cultures. They may see as in an insult if you come in late for something, but that's not practical. And so you can't infringe your values or your beliefs on somebody else and deem that as normal, and you're right and they're wrong because they're late. That doesn't mean that we don't worship God any better or different because we're late.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it's an essence of it's a balance between the both. It's anybody in leadership has to have the awareness of how to manage people's personalities and their behaviors
Mm,
and their norms and their values. That's really
mm,
an integral part of leadership, being able to be empathic and understanding. And in doing so, you're safeguarding individuals, you're
absolutely.
nurturing, you're caring. These are safeguarding, sorry, these are leadership skills. This is the skills that Jesus had. He was a leader, but he followed, but he had servitude, and that's where communion comes in, washing the feet. Be humble,
Be
have
humble.
humility. When you're working
Yeah,
with individuals, because the church is made up of many different families and environments, and we just need to
yeah.
be aware of that.
I asked ChatGPT for 10 characteristics of a female narcissist in church. I'm going to read them out, Michelle, and
Mm,
we can
sure.
talk about what they look like, so people can spot, and we can equip young people especially with the tools to connect. So charm with hidden motives, that's female,
Mm,
probably in leadership. Attention seeking, she gets me the
mm,
center of attention, as you were saying. Like when I went to college, I was never late and I got all
yeah,
A's. Manipulation through guilt or spirituality. You need to take this position. You need to take this position. You are letting down God if you don't, or they manipulate
yeah,
you to do things, or
yeah.
compete. They compete with other
Oh,
women.
yeah.
This is
The
an ugly one,
competing.
isn't it? Very
Yes,
ugly.
yes, that's a very, for sure. I often hear, so for example, when sometimes I lead Sabbath school, and I often hear, not that, in many churches, and I'm sure it's in
Mm,
many denominations as well, where young people, because they have a particular skill for singing or
yeah.
playing the piano or, reading, and they don't want to do it all the time. But
Mm,
the narcissistic female will say, it's your responsibility to do it. You are not serving God if you don't do this every
yeah.
Sabbath. And
Yeah.
that's horrible.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
really is horrible. And again, it's gaslighting behavior. It's passive aggressive. What
Absolutely.
the more you do it, the better you'll become. God will use you. You'll be an evangelist or a pastor one day. They may not want to be an evangelist or pastor someday, but you better use your skills. Otherwise, you are, they'll give the parable of the talents and they'll
Mm,
victimize them with the word of God. You're not using
absolutely.
your talent. You're supposed to sing when we ask you to sing. And if you don't, you're not using your talents for God. Your talents are going to be buried and you'll be nothing.
Oh, wow.
It's one extreme
The
to the other.
devaluing, indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. And the competing with others, the woman who is competing also gossips. They're vicious.
Oh,
They're
yes.
vicious
Oh,
gossips.
yes.
They tear down others and spread
Yes.
rumors against you. They spread rumors against you to elevate themselves.
Yes. Yes. I really wanted to that, Joanna, because you're speaking about my experience when as a child. I was
Mm,
raised in the Adventist church. However, my mother didn't go to church that much, and she used to make sure that I went to church, but sometimes she would leave because she felt overwhelmed. And I loved going to church. I specifically loved Pathfinders. Pathfinders really grounded me. I enjoyed all the activities that we used to do. But Joanna, I remember when other female sisters will come to me and say, "Where's your mother? Why is it you only come to church by yourself? I saw her with somebody down the road. If she can be with that man down the road, why can't she take you to church?"
they
These,
said that to you, the
they
child.
said they would say that to me. And bear in mind, Joanna, I was 12,
Mercy.
13, 14, and I left the church at
Worse.
15. And I didn't come back until I was 27.
Some
And
don't
I
make it back.
vowed, sorry?
Some don't make it back.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Some of my friends who left with me are still out there. And some of them, unfortunately, said they would never step foot back in an Adventist church.
Mm,
We need to understand the damage that this causes.
yes.
The trauma that it causes. Church is supposed to be a happy and an inviting place where we can serve God in unity and in harmony. But those adverse childhood experiences, some of my friends didn't come back because of it. And that's the first thing they think of in their mind. Are they going to be judged by what they wear, Are these
Hmm.
particular women going to judge them, judge their family members? We need to. I'm talking to the sister who's familiar with the behavior that they're doing. And please understand the impact that you're causing on our young women as well, and our young people.
Yeah. The last point I wanted, there's so many more points to the female
Mm,
narcissist. The victim role, when she's called out,
mm,
she becomes the victim and
mm-hmm.
somebody else is blamed. She shifts the blame onto somebody else. And then she pits people against each other, that triangulation
Yes,
that they do
yes,
to create division, the lack of empathy, the entitlement. But the one I want to stay with, number 9. Number 10 is the resistance to correction. You can't correct them.
no,
They are
no.
not
They'll step down. They'll
submissive, not
step down
submissive. They'll,
immediately.
they'll threaten to withdraw their
Yeah,
membership, take their
yes,
money, do all
yeah.
sorts if you want to correct them. But here is
Mm,
one that I want to do. Number 10 then is image maintenance. And I want to spend a few minutes on this, Michelle, because if she's like this
sure.
at home, her daughter is getting it at home. If
Oh,
she's
yes,
like that at home, she is like that at church. If she's like
yeah,
that at church, rather, she's like that at home. Her
yeah,
daughter is not safe. Check on her daughter. Check on
yes.
her sons. Check on her husband. Because if she's like this in
Mm,
public, in private, she's something else. This woman is not reflecting the character of Christ in any way.
absolutely.
So she appears holy and
Yes.
generous or successful, but behind
Mm,
closed doors, she's critical and harsh and unkind. And if she wants to teach the children, she probably wants to be youth leader,
yeah.
women's
Yeah.
ministries, or she wants to be the elder. She
Mm-hmm.
wants those roles, and she will never be a deaconess. No,
Mm,
that doesn't suit her. She wants to
mm,
be a head of a department, but it's not the head
mm.
deaconess, because that requires work, and she don't want to do that. So image is really important to her. So her
Yeah.
children will look really well put together, and on the surface they might look like a really together family. But check on
Yeah.
her daughter, because her daughter, although sometimes her daughter might demonstrate
Mm,
traits that make other children stay away, but
mm.
that child would not be having a good time at home with a
No,
mother
not at
like
all.
that.
And women say that this environment will cause mental health issues. We wonder sometimes why our young people, you may hear, did you know that, the young person might start to self-harm, or
Yes.
the young person may, start exhibit behaviors, always constantly sick. I've got a tummy ache, I've got a headache, because we don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they withdraw most of the time. They seem,
Yeah.
and they may not even seem unhappy on the surface, like you said, but gradually they will build up,
Yeah.
traumatic issues, traumatic behaviors in their life that will cause them to end up
Yeah.
having bipolar, or just
Any
mental
mental
health
health. Yeah.
concerns. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, any mental health
Yeah.
concerns, not specifically bipolar, but
Yeah.
any mental health concerns. But this is the
Yeah.
beginning of it.
Yeah.
Just being stressed, not being able to share what's happening, always seeing happy. The facade that they have to keep up, this facade, and that's
Mhm.
draining. That's mentally draining. It's emotionally draining. So be
Absolutely.
aware of that. The woman that exhibits these behaviors, when they have children, think about what they're suffering at home. And may I also say that, Joanna, that behind these traits, these narcissistic traits of these women and men, are a lot of self-doubt, a lot
Mhm.
of insecurity,
Mhm.
sometimes issues that have not been addressed from trauma that they have experienced, but because they haven't done the healing, because they haven't done any form of counseling, and because they're fearful of going to see professional support, other people suffer. We
Yeah.
suffer, and our children suffer, and then it becomes a pathology in our lives, and it just goes on. It just goes into different family members and whatnot. When are we going to interrupt the pattern?
Yes.
And we interrupt it by educating ourselves. We interrupt it by calling out the individual to say, what you're doing is damaging, it's harming, it's emotionally harming. Yeah,
Yeah. Hold them responsible and
for
risk
sure.
risk their wrath, because sometimes people don't call them out because
Mm,
people are afraid of what will come back.
yeah,
risk their wrath. And sometimes these
Mm.
people, use money and things to buy friends. And so
Yes.
many friends are indebted to them that they don't dare speak up.
Mm.
And the one that speak up, they get ostracized by everybody else, and
Mm.
nobody wants to be
Mm.
with it. So the lone woman that might say, hey, this is not okay, this behavior, it needs to be fixed, they will get it, right?
Mm.
So what we're asking in terms of safeguarding, and we're hearing the stories of young women who are saying, I have left
Yes.
church, I will not
Yes.
go back to church because of that woman. We have had
Yeah.
too many of those stories. So, these young women need places of safety that they
For
can work
sure.
with in
Yeah.
peace. And these older women that are doing these things, they need to be called out. They need to be held accountable. They need
Mm.
to be taken away from leadership, and people need to be safeguarded against them. That
Yes.
so safeguarding, these are the things, that the nuances of safeguarding that oftentimes is not covered in policy. And when it's happening in
Yeah.
churches, and it becomes religious abuse, people don't
Mm.
know what to do.
Mm.
And there are many people limping around with lots of church hurt
Mm.
that needs healing.
And along
So
with the flying monkey syndrome as well,
mm,
when these narcissistic, when you see these behaviors in these women and they're coming to you with gossip, please challenge it.
yes,
Be brave enough to challenge it, especially when it's with a young person, especially
absolutely.
when you're talking negatively about a young man or a young woman. Be brave enough, be bold enough to challenge it. We've said the other day, on another presentation, there's a statement on the bus that says, see something, say something, do something. I love that statement.
Yes,
We need to start doing something. If you see, you stay, and challenge the status quo, challenge the gossiper, you know, just, be respectful, of course, but we need to challenge it and say, sister, I'm not sure if this is appropriate for you to tell me because the other person isn't here to defend themselves. Why don't we
absolutely.
wait until the other person's here? And you see how quickly they'll either cut you off because you're not the flying monkey, you're not
Yeah,
playing their games, or hopefully they'll be silent and check, put a check on themselves, because at the end of the day, you're harming people.
I
You,
think if enough people do it, if enough people check them, then
yeah,
we can have change. If
yeah,
we can't stay silent. If you see
mm,
something, say something. I want
yeah.
to thank you for watching this video. As usual, we're going to invite you to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so, and share this video with somebody who you know will benefit.